So there's some secrets that Tesla doesn't tell you about supercharging, and we've been seeing a lot of posts lately in regards to these issues, so we kind of want to go over them and tell you some secrets that Tesla doesn't tell you, but they should, about supercharging.
Okay, so basically I was on a road trip last week for Thanksgiving. I went all across Nebraska and Kansas. I do this every year. I've been to a lot of superchargers all across the country, and I noticed this trip, more than any other, a lot of people didn't really know how superchargers worked. And
Yeah.
it's not that difficult, really. You just go back up or pull forward, depending, and plug in. But there's a secret to how to charge the fastest. So one thing to be aware of is you can actually plan where you're going to stop to supercharge by using a site such as a Better Route Planner before you even start your trip. It just helps you get a good idea of how many stops are going to be required, how long you're going to have to stay at each one of those stops, and if there's alternate routes you can take.
Now you can actually use Tesla's own software and everything. They actually have an online thing you can type in where your destination is and everything. But that will actually route you to charge as little as possible or as few as stops as possible. Whereas a Better Route Planner will actually make it so you might stop a few extra times, but it'll be the fastest trip possible.
Yeah, so maybe stop several short, like 15, 20 minutes charges instead of one 1 hour charge.
Which every time I am on a road trip, I always charge as little as possible. So I normally use a Better Route Planner because when you are charging between like 10% and I'd probably say 70 to 80%, that's going to be your fastest time to charge. Those last 20 to 30% can actually be pretty slow. So I always try to keep my battery, I don't want to say as empty as possible, but as low as possible.
Comfortably
possible. So that when I arrive to my next supercharger, I have maybe 10% left.
You don't need to use these online route planners if you don't want to. If you get in the car, you can put in any destination and the car will instantly calculate how many stops. If, say, we're in Colorado, we can say we're heading to Florida. It will instantly tell us exactly where to go and where to stop and show you everything you need to know right in the car.
But yeah, it's just not like the navigation is bad in the Tesla. It's just the Tesla will make it so you will be stopping at charging stations a little bit longer, and that's the top portion of your battery that takes longest to top off.
Another thing before you even start on your road trip is to try to leave with the optimal battery charge. Sometimes that might be 100% if your first supercharger is very far away, but other times you might only want to leave with 30 or 40% if you know where your next supercharger is going to be.
And depending on if you would rather supercharge than be at home, or if you didn't want to supercharge as much and take that time, definitely leave with 100% so you can get as far as possible.
Another trick when you are on your road trip, either set your destination as your final destination or set the supercharger as your actual destination. By doing that, your car will actually precondition the battery so it will be warmed up to be at optimal battery temperatures.
And this was actually just released a few updates ago. It's actually not that new of a feature, so I don't know if that many people actually know about it.
Yeah, and if you're in warmer climates, it might not be as important, but for most people in colder climates, it takes a while for your battery to get up to temperature, and so by doing that, navigate to the supercharger, it puts a little bit of heat into the battery so that when you arrive, you're able to charge at the fastest supercharging speeds possible.
So V2 superchargers actually share 2 stalls, so 2 cars can be charged off of one charger, and those are 150 kilowatts.
Yeah, that's just a recent update. Previously, those V2 superchargers were about 120 kilowatts or 130, depending on when they were installed around the country. And the way those works is, as Eric said, they're shared. So if a car arrives before you and has, say, stall 2A, and they are charging at 90 kilowatts out of that 120, when you plug in at stall 2B, you're only going to be able to get 30 kilowatts until that car starts lowering the amount of power they need.
It
balances out until it uses that full 150 kilowatts if you're at a site that's been updated. I believe all of them have been updated to the 150 now. The majority of them. There are V3 superchargers as well, which go up to 250 kilowatts, but they're still at very limited locations at this time.
But the nice thing with the V3s is they're not paired in a sense that it will split that 250 between 2 cars. 2 cars can be charging on 2A and 2B at the same time, and both would get a full 250 if your car is capable of that, which currently only Model 3s are capable of a full 250. Model S and X's will max out at 150, depending on how old it is. Some of the older ones max out at a lot less.
Yeah, and with that 150, those Model S's and Model X's will see that at either a V2 or a V3 supercharger, but I have seen reports that some Model S owners have seen kilowatts of 180 at some V3 things. They only saw that a couple superchargers, and we don't know if it's a software update that's coming or it was a mistake. We don't know. But basically, it might be possible to still go above that 150 on some of the older Model S's and Model X's. There's also something called an urban supercharger. These urban superchargers are not paired, so you never have to worry about pairing at those, but they typically max out at about 72 kilowatts. So again, when you're pulling into a supercharger on your road trip, just kind of drive by if you don't know how they're labeled, and just make sure that if there's other cars there, try not to use one that's already in use if it's a V2 supercharger, just if you want to get the fastest supercharge possible. The other one will still work, but I mean, I was just at a supercharger last week when I was on vacation for the holidays, and someone was complaining that supercharger, he was limited to 72. And then he said, but the oddest thing happened, when the car next to me left, it jumped to 144. And it's like, that's pairing.
There's your problem.
But he was just totally clueless and thought they were broken. That's totally normal behavior.
So I really wish Tesla would actually make that information more readily available, because that is like the #1 problem I see is people will complain about supercharging speeds, but they're going on a paired stall when next to them are unpaired stalls, and they could really max their battery that way. So really keep that in mind, and just drive by, because that's what everyone does. We're not crazy.
It just balances out, and as one car charges and gets filled, the other one starts getting more power. And just remember that at a V2, which is virtually every supercharger in the United States.
Yeah, there's very few V3s right now.
Even actually the whole world, most of them are V2. Only V3 ones are a few in California, a few are being built in other states, in Vegas, and they're starting to build some, but they haven't activated them like across the Trans-Canadian Highway.
And the easiest way to see if the supercharger you're going to is a V2 or a V3 is in your car. Just go ahead and click on that supercharger location, and it will actually tell you the max charging rate possible. So another helpful hint is when you are on a road trip, or even just whenever you need a charge, is look on your app or even in your car at the nearest superchargers. If you have a couple of them, see how busy some of them are, because it'll actually tell you how many stalls are open. And that way you can kind of gauge, this supercharger is basically full, this one has like no one, and that way you can make sure you can get an unpaired stall. So like in preparation of this video, there were a few superchargers we could have stopped at. One is at well actually both are at a mall, but one is down in Lone Tree, and that one only had 2 available out of 10, whereas the one in Boulder, which we are at right now, has 6 available. So we chose to go to Boulder. They were about equidistant from where we were. So just keep that in mind too, is really use your resources and things provided in the app and the car to make sure you can maximize your charge rate as best you can.
And yeah, we're not saying drive 30 miles out of your way to use another supercharger, but if there's a couple on, these are extreme examples, but we were kind of equidistant, as he said, from either one of those. It didn't matter which one we went to. But if you're on your road trip, you're not going to want to go 30 miles out of your way if there's one that's straight ahead.
And in California especially, it's really easy to find one that might be 3 blocks away that's half as busy versus the one you're at right now is full with a line.
Also with those, so you can see those in the app, but you can also see those directly in your car if you choose the navigation screen and then touch on the little lightning bolt icon. Then you can see the list of superchargers, and you can see little icons on the map showing exactly how many cars are at each supercharger nearby.
So typically I try not to charge above 80% on road trips, and there's a few reasons for that, because yeah, that last 20-30% can really take a long time to get to, but there are situations where you will need to. Keep in mind, if you are traveling into headwinds, that can reduce your range. If it is really cold out and your battery is not up to temperature, even if it is up to temperature, that'll still reduce your range. There's quite a few things that can reduce your range, so you really want to make a mental note of that too. Do you need a little extra percentage? Normally I try to get to superchargers with about 10% or less remaining on my battery, but some people don't like to play it that risky and like to get there with like 20 or 30%. But that's where a better route planner comes in, is you can actually type in there what the percentage you want to arrive at. So it really helps out, and you can put your like air temperature and any kind of stuff like that. So it is a really great tool to be able to maximize your road trips. So yeah, that's just some of our helpful hints that I wish Tesla would publicize a little bit more. Do you have any supercharging hints that you use? Definitely drop them down in the comment section below, and we can check those out and talk about it down there. As always, huge thanks to our channel sponsor, Abstract Ocean. If you guys are looking to accessorize a Model S, X, or Model 3, much like this one. Definitely check them out, all linked down below. My two must-have accessories are going to be a center console wrap, because I'm not a huge fan of that gloss black fingerprint and scratch prone material that Tesla uses, as well as a matte screen protector. It really helps cut down any kind of glare as well as fingerprints. And using code Tesla Inventory will get you 15% off your first order. As always, thumbs up if you enjoyed that video. Go and click here to subscribe, here for some other ones, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.